Okay.
Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Paula Shapiro. I'm the section director of the amazing section of Civil Rights and Social Justice of the ABA. I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about our usual CRSJ 101 membership event, where we tell you a little bit more about how the section works and how you can get involved with us. I'm joined by the Associate Director, Alli Kielsgard, as well as one of our council members, Dan Appelman, who is also on the Center for Human Rights and in leadership in the international law section. And he's going to talk to us today about resolution development as a member when you're interested in something. So we are really excited. Welcome, Dan. And thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Paula. Thanks, Alli. I just wanted to say that before I really start into the substance of the topic, that this 101 session and a lot else about CRSJ could not happen without the wonderful staff that just introduced me, and Alli too. You should think of them as a resource. They are so valuable for us, and our section would be so different without them. And so I just wanted to say that going in and give them so much thanks for their help. So the topic for this 101 session is resolution development, policy development. And I'm going to assume, for the purpose of this half hour, that that most of you or many of you may have missed the part one of this session that was given by our section delegates, Mark Schickman and Wendy Mariner. So I'm going to be going over a little bit of what they did too, just for background for those of you who missed it. But I also would say that these sessions are being recorded, and you can find the first iteration of this theme on our channels. Do one of you want to say something about that, Paula or Alli?
Yes, so we have a whole playlist dedicated to CRSJ 101. I'll go ahead and paste that into the chat shortly. Yeah, I'd encourage all of you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get regular updates that way.
Thanks. And this first slide just talks about CRSJ for those of you who may be unfamiliar with it and who is on the executive committee and about substantive committees. It is such a wonderful section and has so many avenues for engagement. And one of those avenues is resolution development or policy development. I'm going to use those two terms interchangeably, but let me tell you what it means. One of the things that members can do in the ABA is develop proposed policies for the American Bar Association to adopt officially as ABA positions. And there's a process for doing that. And why would we do it? First of all, policy is the ABA can't act on anything, can't advocate anything, can't take a position on anything unless it has adopted as an official matter a policy on that matter. And that means that the ABA president can't even speak about a matter unless there's an adopted ABA policy behind it. And so policy development is really important. It emerges on the committee level from members of the committee saying to the co-chairs, hey, this is an issue I really care about, and I would like the ABA to speak out about it. And therefore, that sets something in motion. Through the committee work, committee members can draft the proposed policy and then send it through the bureaucracy to be finally adopted by the ABA's House of Delegates. The ABA's House of Delegates is the one that officially adopts ABA policy that then the president can speak out on and that committees can have more engagement on working on going forward. So to be a voice on important issues, to use our legal expertise to make a difference on issues that are passionate for you. Through the Civil Rights and Social Justice section, we develop a lot of policies. I was astounded to find out just recently that we are the section that accounts for most, we are the section group that accounts for more section policies, more ABA policies than any other section, 15 to 25%. We are very active in doing that. Therefore, if you're interested in helping the ABA speak out about an issue that you're passionate about, that's why we do it. And we have a CRSJ webpage that lists by issue and by committee many of our adopted resolutions. So let me talk a little bit about, why we do it. Let me talk a little bit about how we do it. So resolutions are developed on the committee level by committee members. If they feel like they're good enough, they present them to the committee for support. And then the committee decides whether it's good enough and strong enough and ready enough to send to the section. And in this case, our section is Civil Rights and Social Justice. Civil Rights and Social Justice and other sections have councils. And one of the things those councils do is to consider draft proposed policies. The Civil Rights and Social Justice section just had a council meeting at which maybe 5 or 10, maybe even more than that, proposed resolutions were considered and voted upon. I'm going to now kind of speak personally as somebody who helps develop some of these resolutions, just to tell you about what happened with my resolution that I developed. I, along with other members of my International Human Rights Committee, that's part of our section, developed a proposed policy on asking the government to establish a national human rights institution. So we developed a proposed policy for that, and the section council voted on it and it approved it. And then it was sent to other groups within the ABA to review and approve or disagree with. Once that happens, whatever council is behind it, whatever ABA groups is behind it, then sends it on through a number of other hoops, one of which is, and the ultimate one of which is the House of Delegates, the ABA House of Delegates. This process only happens twice a year. I mean, the process of the House of Delegates voting on it. Throughout the year, these policy proposals are developed and sent up to their various councils, but the ABA, through the House of Delegates, only votes on them twice a year. Once at the ABA annual meeting, this one is coming up in early August, and the second time they do it is at the ABA mid-year meeting, which is mostly in January of the year. So all of these policy proposals from all over ABA groups kind of filter their way up to the House of Delegates that votes on them, and then they either become or don't become ABA policy. So that's the overall sort of architecture of how it happens within the ABA structure. But I want to talk a little bit about starting at the beginning and how it really starts happening. I had the idea, or at least a number of other other NGOs, ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center and some other groups had formed a coalition to advocate that the federal government establish a national human rights institution. And they asked the ABA, and through my committee, they asked us if we could have the ABA speak out on that matter. So we developed that policy resolution to try to carry that forward. I should say here that the policy resolution is loosely termed R&Rs, which stand for resolution and reports. The first part of the R&R is the resolution, and it has to be very short. Ours was 2 paragraphs, 2 short paragraphs long. At most, these resolutions go for 1 page, and it says resolved that the ABA should do this, resolved that the federal government should do that. And then it's followed by a report that supports that resolution. It supports the resolution by logic and judgment and values, but it also supports the resolution by looking back at previously approved ABA resolutions. For example, we looked back and we found that there was no prior ABA resolution on national human rights institutions, and that was great. But we also had to sort of answer the question, were there any ABA previously adopted resolutions that would conflict with it, or that supported it even though it didn't talk about it directly? All those kind of answering those questions and referring to previously passed ABA resolutions, if any, are part of the report. The report has to be very succinct, divided into sections, answered some of those questions, and it can't be more than 15 pages, including footnotes. To some, it looks a little bit like, they look a little bit like law review articles, because they do have footnotes and they do refer to precedent, ABA precedent. So that's the second part of writing. It's pretty easy to write a resolution, a proposed resolution or series of resolutions. It takes more time and needs more work to develop the report itself. I should say that only the resolution has the force of official ABA-dom. When people look back and see what the ABA has spoken out before, they don't really look at the report very much. They just look at the resolution, and like if we recommend something to the State Department, we talk about what the resolution we've passed is. The State Department doesn't look very much at the report, but the report is important to get the ABA's House of Delegates to agree to it. And it's important to get the constituency within the ABA groups to sign on to it and support it as it works its way through to the House of Delegates. So you see on the slide some of the things that I've been talking about. One thing that I haven't really mentioned yet that I'd like to spend some time on is the start early and timing for approval by CRSJ Council. Start early. We started on our resolution about a year ago. A year passed and the mid-year meeting passed, and now we're coming up to the annual meeting. So why did it take so long? It took so long just to get consensus about what that resolution should say, to write a report that really looked credible and authoritative, and to also get the buy-in by a number of different groups. But even just considering approval by the CRSJ Council, which is kind of like the first formal vote and step, it takes time to do that because the CRSJ Council meets just 4 times a year. And at each of those meetings, the CRSJ Council considers resolutions that have been forwarded to it in the hopper. And so if you're developing a resolution, you want to get it into the hopper so that the council in the first instance can vote on it, which is the gateway to everybody else, all the other groups voting on it. And what I found is most helpful is to form a working group, a small working group of committee members who are passionate about this topic and want to help. We quickly come to an easy way of drafting a resolution, although sometimes later they have to be revised depending upon the comments we get back. But the working group is even more helpful, and it's especially helpful for delegating tasks in terms of writing the report that underlies and supports the resolution itself. So in our case, in the case of the resolution on the National Human Rights Institution, we had 3 members. It was me, it was a member, Dina Horwitz, and it was another member, Lakshmi Ghoshmal. And those 3 members, kind of between us, we delegated the tasks of writing the report. We found it really helpful as a kind of techie matter to do it on a Google Doc where we could all collaborate. And we didn't have to send Word documents back and forth and figure out which draft we were working on. In any event, a working group and starting early with a working group is very important. Once you have, and I should mention now that there's a drafting guide and an ABA form for the report and for the resolution. And we have places on our CRSJ Council website and also within the House of Delegates website within the ABA. You'll find all the rules and guidelines for drafting the report. If it's not drafted according to ABA sort of style guide and rules, then it'll get kicked back to the council and to the committee, and you won't be as close to having the House of Delegates approve it. It'll be kicked back within the sort of bureaucratic procedure. So it's important to consult with the written procedural guidelines. And I guess now this slide is useful for talking about how we really did it. I mentioned that we worked with several civil society groups who wanted us to come in with them and be able to advocate. And we said, well, we can't do that unless there's a resolution. So these civil society groups now are waiting eagerly to see what the House of Delegates is going to be doing with our report. If you're a committee chair or co-chair or a policy vice chair or another part of committee leadership, you should be promoting within your committee the possibility of engaging your members on any policy that seems within the ambit and the mandate of your committee. So it's really up to the committees. The ABA only considers that which finds consensus within the committees. And this is the chance to be engaged for them. I work on the report from a structured outline. You can see from the rules of what should be in the report, it's broken down into sections. For the National Human Rights Institute, we started out with what is a National Human Rights Institute? And then we went to what other countries have adopted and built National Human Rights Institutes. Why doesn't the United States have one? And then why should the ABA care? Why should the ABA be involved in advocating for the creation of a National Human Rights Institute? The sort of MAGA framing of that is what do you want the ABA to say about it? Why should the ABA be urging Congress to do anything, urging the United Nations to do anything, urging the president to do anything? Why is this relevant to what the ABA does? And the logical answer to that is that most of these policy resolutions promote the rule of law. And one of the goals of the ABA is to promote the rule of law. That's our business. We're lawyers, and we're in the best position to do that. The ABA is the voice of the American legal profession. So who better than the ABA to advocate and to push a policy and urge the government or international institutions to do anything? So you confirm there's no pre-existing ABA policy. In our case, there wasn't. But we also had to add a bunch of policies that we found that supported human rights generally. We felt that that would be a good supporting foundation for the ABA to consider the specifics of forming a national human rights institution for the United States. And now I get to a very important part of this slide, and that is that each section, including our section, Civil Rights and Social Justice, has section delegates to the House of Delegates. They attend the House of Delegates meetings, and if there's and the resolutions that are approved by the council, they carry those to the ABA. And if there's any questions about from the House of Delegates about those resolutions, it's our delegates that answer those questions. And furthermore, if there's any comments from any groups that might doom or jeopardize the success of our resolutions within the House of Delegates, our House of Delegates delegates within CRSJ make contact with those other groups and find out what the objections are and try to negotiate a compromise. Many times these R&Rs are not adopted as originally written, but are adopted with compromised language that will satisfy one or more interests of the constituent groups that we're trying to get support of. And even more importantly, will avoid any of those constituent groups from putting in a vote that's negative on adopting those policies. So you want to get as much of the ABA behind the resolutions as you can, and as few ill feelings about those resolutions. In fact, no ill feelings that would doom it before it ever gets to the House of Delegates. And our section delegates for the House of Delegates currently are Mark Schickman and Wendy Mariner. And they urge, and I think staff would urge too, that even at the time that you are debating what kind of resolution you want to do, this is at the very beginning of the process, that you let those delegates know and get their ideas about it. Oftentimes they know what the prior policies are that would bear upon them, either positive or negative. And they're very skilled at negotiating and helping these resolutions wend their way through the various groups that would support, and then ultimately to the House of Delegates. So keep them informed early on, seek their counsel. And they're always pro CRSJ, wanting the best for our policies. And the last part of this slide is that policy development is partly political. I hope you've gotten the sense from what I just said that can be the case. Political in the sense of needing to have consensus and no opposing views. And the fact that the ABA is such a big organization that there are inevitably concerns because a policy advocating one set of values may conflict with a group that has purview over some other values, another committee, another section. and to get them all on the same page is the task of this thing. So the more support from other ABA groups, the better, and expect the need to compromise, and you'll need to advocate for your draft resolutions, especially at the council level when the council is considering it. I went before the international law section after our council here at CRSJ passed our resolution asking for the international law section to support. And there were some questions that we had to answer. So we're close to, 5 minutes before our 30-minute limit, but I just wanted to show you a couple more slides about the resolution and report. There's an examples here, and you can look back at them, if you want to, or you can contact me for an example of the National Human Rights Institution R&R that we have that you can use kind of as a template. Consult. So I think there's nothing more on this. There's a drafting guide that Alli put the URL, the link to in the chat, and that's very useful. So I think that's that. The next slide, begin early, do your research, consult CRSJ delegates, seek out allies, respond to House of Delegates rules, all of these things I've just talked about, and hopefully, even though I've talked pretty rapidly, hopefully you understand some or all of it. Nobody ever understands this whole process. Everybody needs help. And a 30-minute session, or even part 1 and part 2, an hour session, is not enough to really be so familiar with it that you won't need to reach out. So please reach out. That's that slide, and join us. Alli or Paula, do you want to say anything about the join us slide? And are there also, I guess, are there any questions?
Yeah, feel free to add any questions to the Q&A, and then we'll try to answer them. We'd love for you to join us if you're not yet a member. You can go to ambar.org/CRSJ and get more information about the section and membership. We also have all of the social channels that are listed at the bottom of the screen. If anyone has additional questions after this session, you can email crsj@americanbar.org.
Or me at dan.appelman. I should put that in the chat because the spelling is funny.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Please do, I put my email into the chat, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And Dan, thank you so much for your awesome presentation. Great job.
Oh, and anybody who wants to can talk to me about what I've just said and any questions you have too.
Thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. Bye-bye.